Welcome students to Unit 3. We'll be focusing on the concept of intelligence, and we'll be looking at the relevant theories within the field and also the research that has emerged within the field of intelligence. What is intelligence? What do various people say about it? How do they feel it should be approached, and so on. So this is going to be quite a different experience in that you've read some of the literature, you've read some of the documents that are available on intelligence, but we are going to work our assignments in such a way that you're going to be learning about intelligence through the specific assignment that you're doing and the specific barrier that you are focusing on. I'll explain more as we go along. I think a good place to start is always a definition. So what is intelligence? The first thing I want to say here is there is no one definition of intelligence. As you can see, I've extracted 5 definitions from different people. They have not agreed on what intelligence is. Very few people do agree. And so this helps us to understand that we can look at the literature, but we can also develop our own definition. What do we feel that intelligence is? So let me start with Sternberg. So Sternberg will focus on a little bit later in this video again, but he says that intelligence is the ability to learn from experience and to adapt to, shape, and select environments. So think about that. It's about how you experience the environment, how you change the environment to suit what your needs are. Terman talks about the capacity to carry out abstract thinking. So thinking about how things could be, how things are not necessarily concrete or things that you can change or move, but abstract thinking is more about things that need to be solved in the mind. Unknown here talks about its adaptation to the environment. So it echoes a little bit about what Sternberg is saying. Then Dearborn talks about the capacity to learn or profit by experience. So he focuses there on experience. Then I also took a definition from the dictionary just to show you that the definitions are so vastly different, although some of them do echo the same sentiments. So the dictionary says the ability to apply knowledge to manipulate one's environment or to think abstractly as measured by objective criteria such as tests. So I'll talk a little bit about the tests that are available when you wanting to test intelligence. At the department, we use something called the SIs, and the SIs has been standardized for Afrikaans and English speaking children. And so the SIs really looks at what your verbal intelligence is, what your non-verbal intelligence is. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We'll talk more about that when we get to the intelligence testing. Okay, so as always, whenever we start a new topic, we look at what do the theorists say. So the theorist that I would like to discuss first is Raymond Cattell's theory of intelligence. I want to pause here and I just want to remind you that we've gone through Piaget in the previous units. And so Piaget also talks about cognitive development. So I want you to keep that in mind as we progress through this video. So Raymond Cattell's theory of intelligence. So he proposed that there are 2 types of intelligence. He talked about 2 components, and it's crystallized intelligence and fluid intelligence. So crystallized intelligence, he says, is more around the acquired knowledge, what you're able to learn and store in your brain and then later retrieve. So when you learn new information, you keep it in your brain, you accumulate that knowledge, and you later retrieve it when you need it in different situations, different circumstances. You pull out facts. So this is great for people in academics, people that are more proficient in the field of academia. They're more proficient in doing research, in studying, those types of things. And these are usually people that are able to deal with more concrete, straightforward challenges that have a clear, possible solution. And it really takes you from A to B quite easily. Although it takes some work to get there, we know because we already possess this information. So fluid intelligence is different. It helps to tackle complex, abstract challenges in life. And so fluid challenges is more around seeing connections, thinking about complex relationships, how things work together. It's problem-solving strategies. So it's more out-of-the-box thinking. When I think of fluid intelligence, I think about, I don't know if all of you know, this program used to come on, it was called MacGyver. They used to call my dad MacGyver. So I always think about it because fluid intelligence is really about looking at the resources around you, thinking outside of the box. How does what I have at my fingertips help me to solve the problem that is presenting itself? This very out there kind of problem with no clear solution. We really have to think in a very different way than what we have thought before to really solve this problem. So it's using the tools at your disposal, kind of putting that into play, as well as strategies that you've perhaps used before, but tweaking the strategy to suit the situation. So fluid intelligence and crystallized intelligence is very different, but of course they both have they both have the places where they are necessary, and they both help people to be successful in different types of scenarios. So I would think crystallized intelligence would be very helpful if you are studying, and fluid intelligence would be very helpful if you are perhaps an engineer that needs to solve very complex problems that perhaps don't have a clear and formally used solution. The next theorist we're going to talk about is Robert Sternberg, and I apologize for not putting the insight reference here. I have added him to the reference list, but the in-text reference right here is Sternberg 1988, and I've also, as I said, put in the full references at the end of this video. So he proposed that intelligence can be divided into three distinct groups: so practical intelligence, creative intelligence, and analytical intelligence. He spoke about practical intelligence being more around street smarts. So this is where you find solutions based on past experiences, or you're using acquired knowledge. So something that has happened before, you've seen this happening before, and so you practically know how to deal with it. So it's more around street smarts. I've learned the skill somewhere. I've learned the strategy, and it's going to help me deal with what is presenting itself before me right now. Creative intelligence is quite different. It's more around thinking outside the box, being inventive or imaginative when a problem does present itself. It's finding novel solutions, developing something that people had not even considered or not even been able to fathom. And so this type of person will create something that has never been there before. Think of the creators of Facebook. It's nothing that has existed before, and they kind of built it almost out of the air. Not the best example, but that's just the first example I could think of right now. And then the analytical intelligence. So this is more what Sternberg talks about in terms of book smart. So you do well academically, you can analyze, you can contrast, you can compare, evaluate, and judge. If you hear those words, what does it make you think about? Makes me think about Bloom's taxonomy. So that person is more academically minded. So you can see there are some echoes and there are some parallels between Sternberg's theories and Cattell's theories. But this is just to give you an idea of what the theorists propose could be how we look at intelligence. Similar, but they are not exactly the same. They do separate a little bit differently. There are many other theories that we can talk about. I've chosen these two because they are quite widely known and many people do use them. So think about, where do you think you fall? Where do you think your main intelligence focus is? Which one of these groups? And then think about your partner or the people around you. Where would they fall on this within these intelligence groups? And think about the fact that you may or may not see the same situation in the same or different ways. If you approach things from a more practical intelligence and your partner or your friend from a more analytical intelligence, your solutions to problems might be very different. The way you view things might be very different, and you might actually surprise each other by the things that you come up with. And then, of course, there are Gardner's multiple intelligences. We will focus on this in the next unit. I just put it here for us to think about the fact that multiple intelligence do exist, the way that students can be approached, the way that learning can be approached, and the way that learning is best received needs to be taken in consideration, or the multiple intelligence need to be taken into consideration. But again, we'll focus more on that in the next unit. So this is just a quick outline on intelligence. The research that you've done so far and the research that you're going to do as we go ahead is really going to pad your understanding. So we've started with purely what is intelligence. We'll progress to the barriers to intelligence. So a child might be very intelligent, but they have a barrier. We'll look at multiple intelligences. We'll also be looking at emotional intelligence and so on and so forth. So I've created this part of the video specifically to focus on the assessment that we will be doing. So your assessment requires you to identify a barrier that does not allow you to access your full potential. So you're not able to show people what you're able to do because a barrier exists. So it's not whether a child has a high high intelligence or low intelligence, but the fact that the child has a barrier, they're not able to even show what they can do. So there are many barriers. I have not named them all here. You are welcome to choose a barrier that is not on this list. When you do look at this video, also look at the assessment, because it's going to give you a lot more understanding if you look at them in tandem. So barriers to learning may be on this list, as I said, or it may be beyond this list. I will be giving you an example in the videos to follow on how trauma can act as a barrier to learning. You are then welcome to choose from this list or out beyond this list what you would like to focus on in your assignment. Your assignment will then be built on your first draft is going to be due first for this unit, and your second draft will then be due for the next unit. So you're going to be building on it over 2 units. Your classmates will have access to your assignment at the end, so please work as best you can to provide as much learning as you can, because we can't all cover every single barrier. Therefore, if we all choose one, we will be able to get through all of them and learn a lot more. You are required to identify your barrier, and please to put it in the forum at the top of the module page. There is a forum available. I will open up a new thread and you can then put down which barrier you'll be focusing on. So it sounds a bit confusing at this point, but once you watch the video that I will be presenting to you on trauma, you'll understand what is expected of you. In the meanwhile, decide on your barrier, read a little bit about it, try to understand how it can act as a barrier to a child who is not able to express and not able to learn, not able to express themselves or learn within the classroom or really interact with their peers and really show what their true potential is. The reason I'm using this strategy for learning, I will continue as I said in the next video. The reason I'm using this strategy for learning is because I want us as students to be really invested in the research of topics. So I've given you some information for intelligence, but now you're going to be doing some digging yourself. You're really going to find that you're going to delve deeper and deeper into the topic of barriers just because it is so interesting. I'm going to create a video on trauma. So these are the references that I've used firstly. So I'll be focusing on trauma in the next video. I'll be looking at what trauma is, how trauma is expressed by children. So what are the symptoms of trauma? How can you identify possibly that the child may be experiencing trauma? Just remember that you need to be careful because sometimes symptoms can be presented differently. Sometimes you think something is a symptom, but it is not. So we will look at what are the symptoms of trauma. Why does trauma prevent a child from actually being able to learn, being able to interact in the classroom, grasp information, and really show what their potential is in terms of the intelligence? Why is trauma a barrier to intelligence? Once I present my video, it will be easier for you to then do your own research on how to present your barrier to learning and present your barrier to intelligence. I hope that you enjoy this assessment. I hope that you enjoy this learning opportunity. I feel that it's going to be very practical strategies, and very importantly, I'm going to present to you how to practically support students that have experienced trauma or students that are finding it difficult to learn in the classroom space. Once I do that, perhaps it'll be easier for you to also implement that in your classroom, number one, and also in this assessment to provide some tips for your classmates through your research on what they can do to help address a barrier to learning. You'll then have access to all of these videos, and if you find a child in your class, for example, presenting with anxiety, low motivation, low self-confidence, even bullying, I haven't added that to the list, but bullying is a big one, you'll know what to do. So I'm going to end this video, and you are welcome to check out the next videos on trauma.